which is choosing a topic and finding some background information. Now, before we continue on, I did want to introduce our presenters today, and we'll start with Robin.
Hi, my name is Robin Tasaka, and I'm the tutor coordinator at the RaW Center.
Thanks, Robin. And I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Natalie Perez. Hey, everyone. And I work at the RaW Center, and I'm our online tutoring and learning specialist. We're really excited to have you folks here with us.
And hi, everyone. I'm Karina. I am the library's public services librarian, and I am the liaison to the Education and Social Sciences Division. I look forward to working with all of you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Karina. Okay, let's get started. I did want to give you guys an overview of what you can expect in our episode today. So the first step that we're going to tackle is how to choose a topic. We're then going to move on to finding background information and reviewing those results. And then we're going to end our episode today with looking at skills and different types of strategies to refine your topic. So let's get started. Oh, and I do want to mention that if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to utilize that chat box. And I'll turn it over to Robin now.
Okay, so we'll try to respond to any chat questions as best as we can, although we're also trying to stick within our hour time limit. So if we're not able to get to your questions tonight, please contact us afterwards and we can try to respond to your question at that time. I also want to mention that we are, like I said, we're trying to stick to our hour time limit. So we might go over a little bit, so we just wanted to give you folks a heads up about that. Okay, so some pro tips as we get started. So very important when you're doing research. I mean, keeping notes is always important, but I think especially when you're managing a big project, like a research project, that you're working on for at least a month, if not longer. So especially as you're brainstorming your ideas, and trying out different paths of research, it's a great idea to just kind of keep a log of what are the ideas you're coming, what are the different things that you're trying. So when you're brainstorming your ideas, right, maybe you choose a topic today, but you start researching it some more tomorrow and you realize, I don't think that's going to work. You can go back, if you kept your notes, right, you can go back to your brainstorms and work with that rather than starting from scratch again. So record keeping and just kind of keeping a note of your brainstorming is really important. Another kind of overall tip we want to give is to talk with others. So this can be anybody. It can be really helpful for sure to talk to a librarian, to talk to a tutor, of course, to talk to your professor. But sometimes it can just be a friend, a family member, just someone you can kind of bounce ideas off of. Sometimes it's not so much the feedback that they're giving you, but just having the opportunity to talk your ideas out and kind of work things through in your head. So we're going to give you folks an opportunity to practice talking out with others today. And we're actually going to jump into that in a second. So, okay, so we are going to put you folks in. Okay, great job. Hope you folks had an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit and to practice using the chat box and practice using the groups. Okay, so let's get to our kind of getting to the meat of our presentation. So we want to talk first about choosing a topic. So no matter what kind of assignment you have, the first thing you always want to do, right, is review your assignment guidelines. There's no point in coming up with a super great topic if it's not meeting the requirements your professor has given you. So this might mean looking at your syllabus, your assignment sheets, the La Lima site, whatever papers or whatever documents that your professor has given you that tells you stuff about that assignment. And you want to kind of pay attention to this in a couple of different ways, right? So you have the requirements, right? If there's things they're saying you have to be doing, but even if they're pretty open-ended, even if your assignment's pretty open-ended, you can still look at what the professor has given you for ideas, right? Even just by them saying, here's an option, you could do this, that might kind of give you a place to start if you really have no idea, where to start. And of course, if you have any questions about the materials your professor has given you or the assignment, you always want to ask your instructor for clarification. You can try to ask a classmate or a librarian or a tutor, but every assignment's really different. Every instructor is really different, so that they're probably going to be the best for specifically what they're looking for in the assignment. After reviewing the assignment, the next thing you want to think about is kind of what is the focus of this class, right? So even if an assignment is really open, usually they want something that's related to what you both are talking about in class. So a good way to think about this is, what do you find most interesting about the class? What do you want to know more about? Maybe there was one day you both spent talking about a certain subject and you kind of felt like, oh, is that all? Like, I want to know a lot more about that, right? Then that would be a great opportunity. Your research paper is a great opportunity to investigate that a little bit further. And if you're on your capstone, right, you can think back to all your previous classes that you've had, especially within your division, right, but maybe in other areas as well. What kind of came up in class that you weren't able to fully explore as much as you wanted to. And, rather than just going off of your memory, it might be great to kind of, dig up those documents, right? Look through your syllabus, look through your textbook, or your other class materials. And again, if it's in your capstone, going back to all your syllabi and textbooks and stuff from all the past semesters. The third thing you want to think about is your personal interests. So a research paper, you're usually going to spend at least a month working on it, if not like months. So you want it to be something that you're going to be interested in, right? You don't want to be putting in all this work and you're just bored out of your mind. So some different ways you can think about how do I make this interesting for myself. One way is to tie it to your major, right? So a lot of times we have to take our core classes that we might not be that interested in, but we all have our majors that hopefully we are interested in. And even if we're not, we need to know that information, right? So maybe if you're a business major, right, or an accounting major, but you still have to take a history class, well, maybe you can research the history of accounting or something like that. I don't really know that much about accounting, so I don't know if that's a thing or not, but you could check it out. You could tie it to a hobby. So maybe if you enjoy playing baseball, you could plug in any sport or hobby here, right? You could research, again, if we're imagining a history class, you could research the history of baseball in Hawaii, something like that. You could tie it to something that has always fascinated you, maybe tattoos or food. And then the last thing you might think about is maybe it's just a topic that you've heard about recently, maybe something you saw on TV, something you saw online, something a friend just mentioned to you, and you wanted to know more about it. Maybe you thought, that sounds really weird. I don't think that's real. Or maybe you just want to know more about it, right? A research paper can be a great opportunity just to learn more about something that you've heard about really quickly. Okay, so we are going to look at a couple of different scenarios and kind of see how we can practice these three different things. And then we're going to put you folks in groups again after those scenarios and give you folks a chance to think about your own assignments and your own interests. Okay, so this is scenario number 1. So imagine our assignment is this. Some people are actively involved in promoting and supporting a cause, such as the release of international political prisoners or protecting the environment. Sorry about that. Research and write about a cause that you support. Come up with a convincing stance, strong arguments, and credible evidence that support your stance. Sorry. Okay, so this is an example of a more specific prompt. In this scenario, our professor has even given us some guidelines for our sources. And I think the most important one to pay attention to here, so we have our length, right? And then we also have the type of sources that our professor wants us to use. So in this situation, our professor wants us to have at least 5 sources that are scholarly and peer-reviewed. So we know that our topic, it can't be something too recent because it's going to take a little while for these scholarly peer-reviewed sources to get out there and to get published. Okay. Our second scenario, this is a much broader, much more open-ended assignment. So imagine if our assignment is research any topic related to U.S. history. So in this situation, you know, in the other one, right, we had it a lot more specific, right? Sorry, I'm going to jump back to number 1 for a second. So our professor here told us that we should be choosing a cause, right? So we can brainstorm what we're interested in, but it's got to be related to some kind of cause. So maybe like related to like endangered species or sexual harassment. But we would have to start with, you know, thinking of causes that we're interested in. In scenario 2, on the other hand, we have a lot more leeway. So I think in these really open-ended assignments, thinking about your own interests is gonna be, you know, a lot more important. And I think it is really helpful to just kind of like write them all down, like lay it out, like make a list of your interests. You know, I think a lot of times we don't think about our interests because they're just part of us, right? But I think just kind of making a quick list can kind of be helpful to think about and see what are all the options you have. So if we are a business major who really loves movies and Coca-Cola, I think we can see how these might all be possible topics, research topics related to history. We could research the history of movies. Maybe we could even pick a specific type of movie, like cowboy movies or horror movies. We could research the history of Coca-Cola or sodas or something like that. Say if we also recently saw a news story about how suburban neighborhoods are built more for driving than for walking and how this discourages meeting neighbors, right? So maybe this is just something I saw really quickly and maybe I want to research the history of suburbs. Or again, I can kind of pull from the course syllabus. So maybe on the first day of class, I saw that on our syllabus, we're going to learn about the Great Depression. And I realized I don't know anything about the Great Depression. So I might want to research that a little bit more. Or maybe the Vietnam War is another thing I saw on our syllabus. And I thought, well, I've seen a lot of movies that portray the Vietnam War. But I don't know if those are accurate. So that might be another area that I might want to research a little bit further and find out if those movies are accurate or not. Okay? Okay, so again, we're going to put you in your groups for a bit. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so I just want to share a couple of great things that we heard out there. Sorry, I meant to warn you that we were going to do this, but we will share anonymously. So I promise, and only good things. So we heard that one of our attendees is working on a senior project for social sciences, and so they're going to look at the media portrayal of women and link this to psychology and sociology. And so this student said that this kind of ties to the types of shows that they're interested in, right? Watching different movies or TV shows, and that's kind of what helped her to find this topic of looking at media portrayal of women. So I think that's a great example. I think that's probably an example a lot of us can always use, right? Thinking about different shows that we watch and just noticing different things that are happening in the in these shows that we might want to kind of investigate a little further. Another example we heard of was not quite a research paper, but another type of assignment where having to identify a topic, which I think also works. So this one was for an English class, a personal narrative, and the assignment was to choose a music or a social movement, or write about how music or a social movement impacted the student's life. And I thought that was such an interesting assignment. So this student thought about, well, I think I'm interested in psychology. Is that a direction I can take? And then they also talked about how, I guess they thought about the different musical experiences they had, and they decided to focus on the first significant experience they had with music, which was in intermediate school. So I just wanted to share a couple of examples, so we can see, we can think about how this has worked for other students and how this might work for us as well. Okay, let me jump to the next slide. And this is Karina.
Hi everyone, just wanted to check. Can you hear me? Awesome. Elijah, Eli, Naomi. Okay, so it's Karina here, and we are about to move on to the next part of the episode, which focuses on the best ways to find background information. If you have a question at any point during this portion of the episode, don't forget to raise your hand or chat in, and we will do our best to answer your questions. Now, before we start searching for background information, it's really important that we go back, we review the assignment instructions, and that we also have some idea of what it is, what topic we'd like to explore. So I'll be guiding you through the process of looking for background information using this scenario. Now, in this example, we've been tasked with writing a 6 to 8 page paper for our sociology class. The paper should examine the impact of any recent trends on today's youth. So not a huge prompt, we can go a lot of different ways with that. And I may not know exactly what I want to write about at this point, but I often find it interesting to incorporate social media into my assignments. And so for this prompt, I'm thinking of starting my search by looking at social media and privacy and whether that would work as a topic. Now, before we go any further, welcome back, Agnes. I want to reassure you that research is a process. Now, what that means is that you may end up writing about something completely different than your original idea. Topics change after reviewing the available literature and reflecting on your personal interests, and that is definitely okay. Most people will actually tweak their topic a few times before choosing the perfect one. So keep that in mind while conducting your research, and remind yourself that if you run into any roadblocks, everybody else does. There's always a way to sort of conquer that and get over that roadblock. So let's go back to our assignment. I'm interested in exploring what impact social media use has on youth's privacy. Before searching, it's very important to sit down and sort of deconstruct the topic. Now, to do this, you'll want to identify what keywords or key concepts you're examining. And once you've done that, you'll then want to think of synonyms for those keywords. People describe things differently. So one article may refer to youth, while another may refer to children. And so they're both ideally kind of discussing the same thing. And so by identifying the synonyms, I'm sort of expanding my search to include as many relevant results as possible. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, cool. So for my assignment, I've identified 3 keywords: social media, privacy, and youth. I've then listed all the synonyms I can think of, or at least some, just a few, for each of those keywords. So for example, another way of describing social media might be social networking, or giving specific examples of social media like Instagram or Facebook. And so now it's your turn. Just kind of on your own individually, take a few. I am seeing some great topics, and it really looks like you understand sort of how to identify key concepts and synonyms. Does everybody feel confident with that stage? Okay, great. So moving on, now that we have a list of keywords and synonyms that we'll be working with, we can start searching. Now, for me personally, when I first start my research, I begin with reference resources. I like to think of these as sort of getting my feet wet, so to speak. It's important to note that reference resources are not scholarly, peer-reviewed articles. I'm looking at you, Tracy. But fear not, we will be showing you how to search for those types of resources in the next episode of this series. Now, with reference resources, they're particularly important because they succinctly give you background information on a topic. So you'll want to use reference sources if your instructor specifically mentions this requirement, or if you just want to supplement other material that you've collected. So what exactly are reference resources? Reference sources provide you with a general summary of facts, definitions, and statistics about a subject. They're quite comprehensive, and you should be able to find information on most subjects. Examples of references would be dictionaries, encyclopedias, and almanacs. You'll want to use references when you are at the very beginning stages of your research, and you just kind of want a basic overview of a topic. I also find reference sources useful because it provides you with related subjects and different pathways, which may assist you in better defining what topic you want to focus on. So I'm going to show you how to utilize two different reference sources. The first is Wikipedia, which is very important to note, is not a scholarly resource. I know that most people, and I am part of this group, check here automatically whenever we're doing anything. So I wanted to make sure we discussed it. Wikipedia is okay as a starting point, but should never really be used in your scholarly paper. This is a big no-no in the academic community, so you'll want to make sure that you don't commit this faux pas. Everyone good with that? Wikipedia is good as a starting point, but don't cite it in your paper. Okay. And then the second resource that we'll be examining is Encyclopedia Britannica, which provides sort of the same content as Wikipedia, but it's a scholarly resource that you can cite in your paper. The library subscribes to the academic version of this resource, and you should use it. So any questions at this point? Okay, great. So let's dive into the two different resources and see what information we can find about social media and the impact that it has on our youth's privacy. Now hold tight while I share my screen with you. And just another second. Dealing with technology, always fun. Let's see. Hold tight.
Share?
Yep.
Okay. How many windows I have open?
Okay, everyone, can you see my screen now? Sorry, I had to jump on a different computer. But let's start with Wikipedia. So just access it however you normally do. I like to Google things. And then we're going to look for social media and privacy. Now, one thing I want to point out is that I had 3 different keywords, right? But I'm only searching for 2 of the concepts here. That's okay. You don't need to find resources that mention every key concept that you're looking at. You can sort of find resources that look at 2 of your concepts or 1 of them, and then you can weave the content within them together in your paper. I hope that makes sense. So looking at social media and privacy, and I'm seeing a lot of stuff. Looking at Facebook, so remember we had identified Facebook as a specific example of social media. I'm seeing some stuff about teenagers, internet privacy, a protection act that was passed in the United States. So these are things that you can take and you can actually look for them in the library's databases at a later point. Let's look at the first link that opened up. So lots of information, privacy concerns with social networking services. We can look at the table of contents to see main concepts of this topic. Sexual predators, stalking, unintentional fame, all really interesting topics, right? So if I'm thinking that the topic is a little too broad, I can always add one of these concepts to sort of narrow it down. And what I always like to do is Control F. And so you can search the page for specific words. So I can see that Instagram was mentioned 12 times. And it's just a way of really getting down into the nitty-gritty of what you're looking for. So Wikipedia is a good jumping off point. And now let's examine the Encyclopedia Britannica. So is everyone familiar with how to get to the library's website? I always just like to use Google and type in UHWO library. If you don't have it bookmarked, you should. And it's the first thing to pop up. And what I'm going to look for is the research tab right here. And so I'm going to click on that. Do it right that time. And we're going to click on research databases. So there's a couple of different ways that you can get to Encyclopedia Britannica. You can click on the E up here, it's organized alphabetically, or you can click on the type of database. And if we look at reference, it will pull up all the reference databases. If I do that one more time, so 44. And then we're going to access Encyclopedia Britannica. And this was not working earlier today, so let's cross our fingers. It looks like it's working now. And so we can type in our keywords to see what pops up. Information about privacy in relation to the law, that's pretty interesting. Issues in new media. And again, if I do Control F, I can look specifically for the information about privacy and issues in the new media. And so remember, with Encyclopedia Britannica, this is something that you can actually cite in your paper as opposed to Wikipedia. Now to do that, you can scroll to the top, and they do have a nifty feature. If we go over here, we can cite it, and you just want to make sure that you're choosing the correct citation style. And of course, with any computer-generated citation, you can copy and paste it, but you need to always double check it for accuracy. One of the other nifty features about this resource is that they kind of point you in other directions. It's not quite working for me. Let's try that. And so other topics related to the internet and privacy issues. So maybe Bill Gates, all these heavy hitters in the internet business. So does anyone have questions about Wikipedia or Encyclopedia Britannica? Just a very basic jumping off point, a starting point for your research. Okay. Now,
Answer the question.
Okay, everyone, sorry, we're just going back to our PowerPoint slide. Just give us a second here. Takes a little while for Blackboard Ultra to think about what it's doing. Okay, here we go.
and we are back, guys. So once you've begun to review the information that's available in the different reference sources, you should have a better understanding of whether or not the topic is suitable for your assignment. In some instances, you may be finding too much information. Now that indicates that your topic is too broad. To narrow your topic, you may decide to examine or to limit your scope to a specific time period or a geographic region. So for my topic, I may decide to examine how social media impacts the privacy of American youth in low-income neighborhoods. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, you may not be finding enough information. which indicates that your topic is too narrow. So to broaden your topic, you may want to consider lengthening time ranges, or maybe even expanding or eliminating geographic, areas. Does that make sense to everyone? It's always good to refine your results. Remember that where you end up at the end of your research paper may be completely different from where you imagined yourself at the beginning of the process, and that's okay. So if I decided that I wanted to narrow my topic further, I might want to explore Facebook specifically and its impact on youth's privacy, or I may be interested in examining how social media bullying affects today's youth. So there's, a variety of different routes that you can take. So always remember just to choose a topic that stimulates you and that offers enough resources so that you can complete the assignment. And that's all we have for you guys.
All right, so that just wraps up our presentation today. Thank you so much for being a part of the first episode of our Research and Writing RaW Skills series. I do want to do a quick heads up and ask you folks, are you here for credit or extra credit? If you are, please make sure that you type in your first and last name as well as your instructor's name into our chat box so we can make sure that we have you on file as attended our workshop. So again, please enter your first name, your last name, as well as your instructor's name if you are here for extra credit. Awesome. We got a lot of Professor Good. That's great. Very cool. Lots of psych. Awesome. Okay, so just again, if you haven't had the chance to, make sure you include your first and last name as well as your instructor's name. And just to kind of wrap up for the evening, we want to invite you folks to attend our episode 2, our next episode coming up on Thursday, February 8th, and that will be at the same time at 5 p.m. The focus of that presentation or that episode is going to be on the research process. So we're really going to be looking at the nitty-gritty details of how to refine that process. At this point, you should know what your topic is. And then if you need any help refining or kind of narrowing down your topic, please, please, please contact one of our fabulous librarians or visit the No'eau Center and work with a tutor in person, or if you can't, you're more than welcome to work with us online. We're looking forward to seeing you next time, and thanks again.